So while this is not my favorite subject to talk about, it always seems to be a part of society's conversation. And because this is a communication, relationship, and ministry channel, I decided we should go ahead and talk about it. Now, before I get started, I will say up front that I am fully aware that not every white European or Caucasian person is a racist. Because for me, the term racist means you have some real, genuine, and palpable hate in your heart towards people of color, black, brown, multicultural, or whatever. That being said, I'm not going to speak to those people today because this conversation will likely not change your mind or the hate in your heart. So if you know that's you, you may want to go ahead and click off. I will not be offended. And please don't leave any hateful statements down in my comment section. Now, while racism can be multicultural, today I want to focus the conversation on speaking to those who show symptoms of what I call racial prejudice towards African Americans. So what's the difference, Ruth? How can you separate one from the other? Well, for me, racial prejudice is when you have some preconceived judgments or opinions about a particular race that may or may not be based on reason or actual experience. See the difference? You may not hate people of color, but you definitely have some strong opinions and on occasion show some real judgment towards people of color for whatever the reason. And those racial prejudices that show up in our thoughts, words, and actions are what I want to speak about today. Because at the heart of racial prejudice lies the root issue. This subject of racism is still a conversation in the year 2020. Hi. Welcome to You Can Talk. I'm Ruth Finney, and this is a channel solely dedicated to helping you talk your way to healthier relationships. Whether you're married or dating, or if you're struggling to communicate with family or friends or people you work with, then this is the channel that will help you experience some real change. If you're willing to put some simple principles into practice, meet me here on Thursdays. Become a part of this talk community by subscribing to You Can Talk, and walk with me through the user's manual as we discover some revelations in communication that you can incorporate into your life so that you can talk your way to healthier relationships. Believe me when I tell you, it's often really hard for so many of us on both sides, black and white, to understand why we are still dealing with this matter of racial prejudice, when on the surface, everything seems to be kosher. Black kids are going to school with white kids. Black people are now living in predominantly white neighborhoods. 9 times out of 10, you're probably working with black people. You have several black friends. Your kids probably even have black friends. You may even have a few black family members. I mean, really, what is the issue, right? Well, trust me, we ask ourselves that very same question. What is the issue? But here's what I've discovered in my 40 plus years of living. In general, it's not an issue of our presence. White people have become accustomed to our presence. The issue begins in who you see as valuable, who you look at as equals, who you deem to be worthy, and whether or not you view us as less than. In our user's manual, the book of Matthew speaks of a story in chapter 18, verses 1 through 6, where even back then the disciples wanted to know who was considered the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, because that meant all others would be considered less than. And from verse 2 on down to verse 6, Jesus took a little child and placed that child in the midst of them and said, "Truly, I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." And if you know anything about children, you know that their focus is always on the inner man, not the outer man. They look upon others from their heart and not their eyes. And they do for others based upon need and compassion, not just by who they see or deem as worthy. Then Jesus goes on to say, "Therefore, whoever takes this lowly position of a child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes on such child in my name welcomes me." So here he's telling us that we are to be welcoming to one another, not just in our presence, but in every area of our lives. Finally, he tells them that if anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it will be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and be drowned into the depths of the sea. Therefore, we are not to cause anyone to fault, hold anyone down, take away someone's life or livelihood, or cause harm in any way. The Black Lives Matter movement is not about nullifying other races. It's not even about elevating the Black race to a place of superiority. The Black Lives Matter movement is about bringing validation to the Black race so people can stop devaluing our humanity. When the Black culture of our human race is not seen as valuable, we don't get taken into account. And if we're not accounted for, we're subject to elimination. And that is what has been happening to us for centuries. Slowly but surely, we're still being eliminated. Eliminated from the opportunities to receive education at the most prestigious institutions in this country. Eliminated from the opportunity to sit in the higher level seats of the boardrooms, the courtrooms, and the floors of the House and the Senate. Even the local positions in our cities, our county, and our state and judicial education systems, they don't have good representation of us. I bring up these areas because these are the levels we need to be represented in so our voice is heard, our need for resources are addressed, and validation of our humanity and our worthiness is taken into account. So maybe you can agree with all of that, or at least understand where we're underrepresented. But you want to know specifically what you can do in your house, among your friends or family, at your job, and in your church and in your city. Because at the end of the day, when the protesting is over, the problems still exist. So the first thing we need is for you to stop looking at us as less than. Here is where you want to do an honest evaluation of your heart, because what lies in the heart enters the thoughts of man and comes out of the mouth. And if there's anywhere in your heart that you see us as less than worthy, less than deserving, less than valuable, or less than equal, therein lies the root of the problem. Though we may all look different, sound different, act different, talk different, we were all created equal and in God's image. So when we look at each other, we're looking at the very image of God. So I ask you, how have you been treating him lately? Have you been talking about him behind his back? Keeping him out of certain areas of your life? Isolating him to the lowest positions? Separating him from your love and kindness? His word says, if you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me. If you're a CEO, the president of anything, a pastor, or a leader in whatever capacity, make sure your company, organization, ministry, institution, or local association has equal cultural representation in leadership positions for the number of Black people you serve. And if you're not servicing Black people on any level, ask yourself why. Ask yourself, why is this culture underrepresented in our organization? Or why are we not serving this culture on some level? And if that is the case, figure out how you can change that. Second, you can stop looking at us as a threat to your life or your livelihood. I'm 5'10" and a very statuesque woman of color. When I enter a room, my presence does not go unnoticed. And I cannot tell you how many times I've entered a room innocently and walked up on a conversation and all of a sudden people stop talking. They take a step back and say something like, "Oh, I better watch what I say. She might beat me up." Now, all of this has happened before I've even opened my mouth to speak. Why? Because people see my color and they see my size and they see me as a threat. This should not be so. Every tall or large Black person you see does not want to beat you up and take your lunch money, nor do we want to take your homes or your positions or anything away from you. The bottom line is that we simply want to be included, taken into account, and given the opportunity to share our gifts and thrive, just like every other culture on this earth. There is approximately $1.5 trillion currently circulating in U.S. currency, which is more than enough to go around. And yet the average household income of Black Americans is $58,000 a year, while our white brothers and sisters' household income is nearly double that. Why? Because the resources and opportunities have not been equally distributed. The truth is, it's harder for Black Americans to receive equal opportunities in education or equal job opportunities. And even if we do get the job, there's not equal pay. And I could go on and on about the inequalities of the banking system, homes and business loans, but I won't. However, believe me when I tell you, the racial prejudices in our country are still openly apparent. We feel the fear. We see the hesitation in your eyes, and we're tired of having to be in the position of going above and beyond just to even be accepted into the room, while our white counterparts, all they have to do is exist, and they are welcomed. The last thing you can do is stop detaching and begin to see us within you. In our user's manual, Romans chapter 12, verse 5 says, "So in Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others." You know, the thing that's most fascinating about the human body is how each organ, every limb, every vein and vessel, along with every type of fluid, powered by the ruah of God's very breath of life, though all very different, work together impeccably to form the human body. And each cell, whether it's a brain cell or a heart cell, a blood cell or a skin cell, functions as one, allowing us to run and breathe and just about do anything we command it to do. The human body is a complex system of anatomical parts that, seen alone, aren't all that appealing to look at, but when put together, produces a powerful and beautiful specimen capable of just about anything and practically limitless in what it's able to achieve. And through its miracles, reminds us daily that with God, all things are possible. We are only limited by what we allow ourselves to believe. So if we feel that parts of our human race aren't valuable, then we fail to receive the benefits of its existence and work to eliminate it and therefore become crippled as a whole. But if we're willing to open our minds to the entirety of who we are as the human race, whether you're a black cell or a brown cell, a white cell or a red cell or a yellow cell, if we work to reattach ourselves to one another, allowing the exchange of gifts and information we each contain, we can dissolve this issue of racism and racial prejudice and shift the focus to not only healing, but flourishing. Living the purpose lives we were put here to live, and therefore benefiting as a whole. So here's what I want you to ask yourself. Who do I see as valuable? Do I see Black people as a valuable and even necessary part of my life, worthy of my time, worthy of my conversation, worthy of my kindness, my service, my investments, worthy of my attention and my friendship? Or do I view them as less than? And if this is the case, what exactly am I afraid of? What is it that I fear about Black people, and where did that fear derive from? And lastly, I want you to begin the reattachment process. We were all put here upon this earth as individual cell containers filled with treasure, full of gifts and information that was meant to be shared, meant to be connected, and function as one body in the very image of Christ. If you can relate to any or all of these communication struggles and are tired of the seemingly endless cycle of communication barriers that are keeping you from the relationships that you desire to have with others, then become a talker. Subscribe to You Can Talk. Select that notification bell down below and meet me here on Thursdays for the next episode, where I'll be discussing more ways that we can talk our way through these trying times. Leave a comment below and let me know what will be your tip of the week or talk-inspired practice that you're willing to commit to working on. Whatever it is, I'm rooting for you and praying for you, because you can tame the tongue, approach with compassion, listen deeply, knock down the barriers, and talk your way to healthier relationships. Let your communication be the light of God's love the world so desperately needs to hear. Thanks for watching, and if you would, please like and share this video, and I will see you here next Thursday.